Well, we're going to start another beautiful day of football talk. We know how to do that pretty well. And for anybody that is watching, listening, and anything like that, welcome to the Top Dog Coverage Podcast. And if you guys want to know who we are, my name is Dirty, and this is my boy C Dub. I should go this way, right? This way.
Yep.
It looks a little bit better. Cool. You guys can follow us at Top Dog Coverage. That's on Twitter. That's on basically everything. We were lucky enough that name was just solid across the board. Instagram, everything. Like you know how hard that is.
Yeah, it was perfect storm. I mean, we really lucked out on that one.
Yeah. I mean, but we won't get too into everything because we do have a very, very important guest that he helped put some change in our pocket. Let me tell you, he put some, and that actually helped us create this. So without further ado, we are going to introduce Fulltime Fantasy Scott Atkins. Scott, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, fellas. Thanks for having me on.
How are you, man?
Great. This is awesome. Hello.
So we have so many questions for you, man. But first of all, we just want to say thank you for a little bit of cash in our pockets, man. You made this fantasy football season more than it could have ever been. We love the layout. We love you made me and C Dub really work hard for that. For that check, let me tell you, man. So I don't know how you got into doing all that and everything, but I absolutely love the format. I absolutely love what you're doing over there. And, hands out to you, man.
Hey, you guys did all the work. I did not predict the season you guys did for Saquon Barkley. Jahmyr Gibbs, I was definitely on. That was a solid pick. But I was scoping out the roster early, and I was like, man, you guys put together a really solid team. It's that's the kind of fantasy year that you kind of remember for a while, because the whole year long you kind of know that you've got the goods, and you just have to stay hot at the end.
Yeah, it was we were teetering. Like I always had to go through me and Christian over here. We would go through, how many times a week did we go through the roster?
I think we would be on a phone call at least probably 3 times before Thursday.
Yeah.
Just discussing all the different options that we had. What was the injury reports looking like? What you hear from practice? What I hear is it was crazy. It was a lot of fun though.
Yeah, we went through we would even do the weather changes too. So we were looking inside Cleveland. Is it going to snow? Is it not going to snow? What's the rain prediction? Is it going to be indoors, outdoors? How does that look for, is the run game going up against strong linebackers? Like we were locked in. Like we were really trying to win that 50 G's, dude.
Yeah, I remember one year, it was many years ago. I had Aaron Rodgers. He'd carried me pretty much all season at the QB position, of course, because he's your stud. And the hot matchup was a Jameis Winston. This is championship week, right? This is basically back then it was week 16. Now it would be week 17. But Jameis Winston had the number one easiest matchup. Aaron Rodgers had like the 32nd, the most difficult matchup in bad weather, in the snow. And it's one of these things where you're conflicted as a fantasy player. You never bench your studs, but you're like, man, this is the cake matchup for Jameis Winston. He has the best matchup. He should easily put a 20-25, whereas Rodgers could get totally, this weather looks horrible. It looks like it looks like just a snow monsoon. So I remember starting Winston, and Aaron Rodgers went on to score 30 points in the middle of that snowstorm, and Jameis Winston put up like 4 or 5 points. And it was the never bench your studs argument was never stronger that day because sometimes we overanalyze, and I think that's the main takeaway there is, yes, use the data, use the extenuating circumstances, the weather, everything that it throws at you, everything you can find when it's a coin flip type of matchup decision between the two. But don't do it when player A is Aaron Rodgers and player B is Jameis Winston.
That's a great point.
Yeah, fair enough, dude. Fair enough. So I gotta ask you, man.
Yep.
You're involved in a bunch of different things. So you said the ACC Cardinals were playing today. What's that?
Well, so I'm from the Southern Indiana, Louisville area, born and raised, and that's the Louisville Cardinals. They're back in the March Madness hunt. They're on 19 of 20 wins in the last. They haven't played a lot of tough quality opponents, but they can only play who's on their schedule, and so it's a big turnaround for the program. Pat Kelsey, a new head coach, has them in contention, and they're probably going to be about a 7 seed in the tournament, maybe a 6. Yeah. But we'll see. But they're playing Stanford right now, and it's a dogfight.
Okay. You said you got that recorded too. I gotta say, man, I give you all the credit in the world to make sure that that's being recorded as you're doing more sports things right in front of you. Like, that's a dog right there. This is what puts you on the Top Dog coverage show right there.
I would not miss the Top Dog show. No.
So I wanna go back to you as a kid. All right. I want to ask a few questions about you in sports as a kid. Were you a player? Did you see analytics? Did you just see things that other people didn't see? Because you can't start a dynasty, no pun intended, with what you have now unless something triggered you back then, or you learned something, or you saw something. What was that like as a child, man? How did that kind of start?
Yeah, I think it does start in childhood. I think it doesn't happen without some form of background. Definitely loved basketball more than football. Played football a little bit. Played basketball a little bit. Wasn't good at either. Didn't really get a big chance at basketball because I was left-handed and they were running all kinds of right-handed offensive drills, and so that never really worked out for me. Baseball, I was not good at because the depth perception was really hard. So I kept getting hit in the face, and they were like, "What's going on? This kid needs glasses," and so that happened. But so I was 10 years old, and my dad brought home a March Madness bracket from his work and said, "Fill one out," and so I entered it. The Louisville Cardinals won that year. They went all the way, and of course, I put them all the way, and so I won my first jackpot in March Madness in '86, and it was like $600. So for a 10-year-old, that's a massive amount of money, and it's a life-changing experience. And so I was hooked on March Madness from that day forward. Started in high school and middle school, putting together 3-on-3 basketball tournaments. That was fun until our lead senior, All-State, one of the Gibson brothers, we hosted a tournament at Letty Walters Park, and it did not have springs on the goals. He went up to dunk, and his arm just stretched, and he landed on his elbow, and I heard the crack and the pop, and then he had to leave. Everybody was mad at me for organizing the tournament, and it was one of those things I was like, okay, I can't be doing this anymore. Then I started doing I was the bookie. I was one of the books, and so I started booking in high school. Just small games, 10, 20, $50 maybe at tops, but then I would let some players run up accounts, and then you get into collections, and then it just becomes a nightmare, and you're like, oh geez. So yeah, there is a childhood background that I think is relevant. You don't think about it at the time, and you're like, man, matter of fact, you fast forward and you're like, wait a minute, this is why this is happening. You kind of look back on it that way. So yeah.
What positions did you play in each sport there? So you had baseball, basketball, and football. What positions were you in there?
Tight end in football, forward. I don't even think they called it small or power at that time. It was just a forward in basketball. I'm 6'2", so that's what I had going for me.
There you go.
Yeah. And
what about baseball?
Baseball, just outfield.
Yeah.
Outfield.
Hey, look, outfield's where you can kind of chill out a little bit. Once you get in that infield, man, you better have awareness going on there. So
yeah, no, I didn't have that.
Yeah, don't worry, dude. I'm lefty too. Okay, there's 11% of the world that's cool, and I don't know what happened to C-Dub over here, but
Wait a second. So you guys are both left-handed? I'm the only right-handed one here.
Yeah, dude. Wow. We're about to actually. This is what happens. Yeah, you get taken right off.
I go on top, you come on the bottom, right there.
Fair's fair.
There you go. Nope, that doesn't work. See, I gotta get better at this. I gotta get better at this thing here.
We're a little rusty. It's all right.
Yeah, man. You know what it is? Each time I have my other show as well called Iconical, and I do interviews and such, kind of just like this, but this is more focused towards the the sports aspects of stuff. And even though you do it over and over and over again, sometimes you get a brain fart of like, okay, where are the banners? There's so much going on behind the scenes here. Clicking, do this, do that. Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah.
So when did Full-Time Fantasy World Championship, or is it World Champion or World Championship?
It's the Fantasy Football World Championships.
Yep. When did that come about? When did that start, man? Or when did you have the idea to say, hey, I got something here?
So it was about 2003. I saw an ad in a magazine. I was working in a sales job, just like everybody else, 9 to 5 in a cubicle. And I looked in a magazine, and there was an ad for the World Championship of Fantasy Football. I was like, what the heck is that? Right? Like, what is this? And there was a message board, a link to the website. This is really cool. And there was a community, a draft out in Vegas, like $1,500, and you draft your team out in Vegas. We're like, wow. Yeah, I'm in, just 2 feet in, jumped in, and became a high stakes player of fantasy football, where you go out to Vegas and you draft your team. And we started that and I was hooked from year one. They had an event. Lenny Papano and Emil Kadlik were the founders, and they just came up with this idea. Could we rather gather up a bunch of fantasy players who really believed in their skills and their acumen and decide to put that kind of money up and draft their team out in Vegas? And so you walked into this ballroom where they had the doors, closed on the outside until everybody sort of mound up on the outside of the conference room in Vegas. It was at the, I think it was at the MGM. The party was at the ESPN zone back in the day on the Strip. And then the doors open up and you walk in, and then just flooded, the whole, you see all these tables, like there's at least 50 draft tables and 50 draft boards, and girls with referee outfits at every table, and there's drinks, and you're walking in and they're pumping the music through the air, the NFL music, and you're like, oh my gosh, I've arrived. This is it, right? This is so cool. Because we're all kind of the same that way. We all play fantasy football and we all love it, and we all think we're the stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and where does that, I mean, not for nothing, it's joked upon, right? Like when, oh, you play fantasy football. We've all heard it. All three of us have heard that at one point. Oh, you play fantasy football? Yeah, you're gonna go play with your boyfriend. You hear it all the time. But until the 1 year when I started getting money, then somebody was like, wait, you can win money off? Yeah, you can get money off of this.
Taking my vacation to Maui this year, yeah.
There was I think it's great what people do with fantasy football. I was in a league at one point, which I left, but every year it was a different person hosting the draft, and I think it builds a sense of camaraderie. You know what I mean? With all these different people, like even just seeing the names that you had on these lists, like we were in the top 10 for most of the year, and I kept noticing these same guys. And the one dude that won the 50,000 this year, I was like, oh, that's what that guy looks like, because I just kept seeing his name here, and then he just stayed on top for a while. And it's like you kind of get to know them without getting to know them. You know what I mean? Like their strategies, what they do, how they look at things, and you're like, wait, this guy's gonna bench this guy for that. What is he seeing that I'm not?
Yeah,
a lot of smart people out there.
Yeah, that was back in the day. They had a message board. Now we use Discord now, and then of course there's social media for a lot of this and podcasts and stuff. We didn't have a lot of that back in the day, but that's sort of how we got to know each other. Well, on the message boards, talking about the event, asking questions about the event, trying to figure out what we're going to eat there, what kind of food's going to be there, what's there to do for the girlfriends or the wives, just every question that could be possibly asked about the live event in Vegas was asked, and about the rules and the format and the structure, and why do you allow no trades? Why do you have PPR versus non-PPR? Why do you have an 11-man lineup versus a 10-man lineup? The dual flex. Why do we allow 4 teams in the playoffs versus 6 or versus 2? And, there's just every single thing and every rule that you experienced at the Circa Las Vegas Fantasy Championship has been debated on, talked about, discussed, flipped upside down, backwards and forwards because you guys are the ones that create this thing, right? We just run it and we're like, yeah, that polls really well. That's 70%. If it's a 70% deal, it's happening. If it's 50%, if it's 50-50, there's no reason to change it. I mean, 55-40, that's not enough. But if there's a rule that needs to be tweaked, I mean, we went through some things with COVID that were, we had to try to figure out what were the contingency plans were there, how we're going to alter the rules during that crazy time. Because there were so many cancellations on Sunday mornings. You didn't find out about those players until that, and it was wild. You're like, oh my gosh. So how does this affect the championships? How does this affect the rules and the structure and the format? And what if a game is canceled? And sure enough, we had the Buffalo game and Bengal game where the game was canceled, and that was the championship game of the World Championships. I mean, we've seen a little bit of everything. So you have time over the years to prepare for these things and try to figure out what's a fair format, but what's also competitive and keeps everybody in the hunt as long as possible while rewarding the best teams, not the luckiest teams.
Yeah. That's I got to be honest, man. I was reading through those rules and the different things and everything like that, and I was just like, when Christian would ask me a couple things, be like, hey, what about this? I said, oh, let me go back, go read the rules, do this, do that, and it's pretty clear cut. The way you guys put it together is very easy to understand too, which sometimes is not the easiest to do, to relay to an audience of however many thousands of people you guys have coming in, because not everybody understands everything. You guys make it pretty clear cut. So when you guys did have things about cancellations and everything, I said, oh, they definitely sat in a boardroom or whatever and talked about this stuff.
Yeah, there are rules, I will say, that people have asked for, and there's tweaks that people have asked for that even make sense, that they complicate things too much for the average person that wouldn't read the rules as clearly. Now, rules are the rules, and you should read. That is the first rule of fantasy: know thy rules, right? Because if you don't, there's no excuse for that surprise. Hey, why can't I pick up anybody? It's Sunday. Well, because you have a certain waiver window pickup time that you missed. I can't help you now because, but I can show you where the video is, the demo tutorial, that if you watch it, it'll help you understand how to take advantage and, get the guys that you want, hopefully. The free agency bidding was a definite wrinkle in the world of high stakes, because back in the day for fantasy football, and I think we probably all know this, it used to be first come, first serve after the waiver wire. And that was just who could race to your computer the fast enough when news came out. And when you're talking about this much money on the line, well, you're at work or you're in a meeting or you're the person who's sitting around the computer shouldn't get rewarded. So we came up with the free agency acquisition bidding, the blind bidding. That gives you that $1,000 budget to use throughout the year and to put in bids for players through a silent bid for the week. And the highest bidder gets that player. And then you just move on, and you pick up as many guys as you can using that method. And that was a game changer, because that gives everybody a chance at the best players and the top free agents every week. But what they're worth to you may not be what they're worth to somebody else. And another man's trash is another man's treasure.
Yeah, 100%. I even noticed something on there that you actually had a hotline. You have a hotline on there too that you can call. Did I read that wrong?
We do have, like, if you're experiencing computer problems, that's why we always say, look, that's why the rules are there. Write the number down, put it on a Post-it note, and either put it in your wallet or put it on your monitor or something, because if your internet goes down, most people have a phone and you have a backup way to get in. And the phone is just as mobile friendly, if not more so, than the computer, I think. Depending on your phone, obviously. But yeah, the phone is always there as a backup. Hey, Jameson Williams, I want him out of my lineup. Put in whoever, Braylon Allen as my flex, right? Whatever it is. So it's always a backup option. It has not been utilized, I can tell you, in 5 years. But it's there.
Really?
It is there in an emergency. And if somebody leaves a message, we'll go and check the timestamp. We would go and check the team. We would go and see if they were able to make that themselves. Again, I think the internet on the cell phones, with the widespread adoption of that many years ago, changed the need for that. But it's still there in the rules. It's a relic.
I thought it was pretty clever too that you had certain time frames in there too. Like, hey, this has got to get done 15 minutes beforehand, or this has got to get done. It gives everybody a little bit of leeway and a little, keeps everybody on their toes. Like, hey, you entered a big stakes, fantasy football thing here. So you're in a heavy league. So, pay attention to what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's the deadline. The 15-minute deadline was there for fairness, just because your opponent is looking at your lineup and they're probably checking it right around kickoff. And so if you can put it in early, at least that lets your opponent know that, if you call right before the deadline and then I check it 5-10 minutes later on the phone and then swap the lineup and you're the opponent, you've looked at it, that doesn't leave a good taste in your mouth. You thought he was starting this guy, and now all of a sudden he's starting this guy. And so then I have to email everybody and say, hey, just so you know, a manual change was made based on a voicemail that was, so like I said, it hasn't happened in 5 years because I think the internet has just saved the day on cell phone. But yeah.
So going into, when you said you went into this league, you went to Vegas, you experienced the the heavens of fantasy football right in your face there, and you mentioned the two guys that have founded this. What was the image and what was the story like of you getting involved into this, not just playing but in depth now? Like, how did that occur? What does that story look like, and who did you talk to in order to be like, hey, I kind of want in on this, and I think what you guys are doing is a great idea?
That's another story too. The world of high stakes fantasy has a long history that they'll probably write about one day. But the World Championship was a successful entity. It ran for I don't know, maybe close to 7 or 8 years, and after about 5 years, it got to be so popular that they were attracting some big suitors to be purchased and acquired, and they were acquired, and the new company came in and ramped up the prize pool and bumped the grand prize up to $300,000, and the league prizes weren't nearly as high as ours. We put more into the leagues because we think in the league of 12, that's all you really have control over. So we put more of the money in the league instead of having a big gaudy top prize that only one person wins. We've just never thought that was the right approach. Other companies do it and they do it very successfully, but we just think that the ROI is better in the league that you control, right? The versus the 12. But anyway, the World Championship of Fantasy Football was very successful until it wasn't. And so I had a podcast. I just started a podcast with my buddy Mike. He had one day asked me, he was one of my players, one of my friends that was a player as well. And we would go to all these competitions like in Chicago and Vegas.
Well, hold on. You got to tell people the name of your podcast. That way they can look it up too, man.
Let us know.
Yeah, it was called the Red versus Blue High Stakes Fantasy Football, but it was a weekly podcast every Friday night at 9:00. The World of High Stakes Fantasy Football, and now it's only we do it 3 times a year now. So we were doing it 50, now we're doing it 3. But it was we put in a good 10 years, a little bit longer.
That's pretty solid.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, so my show was just a Kentucky fan and a Louisville fan, Red versus Blue. Mike was the Kentucky fan, I was the Louisville fan, and we were just chopping it up about college football, college basketball, and every once in a while we'd talk about our fantasy football teams. And the fans and the listeners were more engaged with the fantasy football talk every week. Every week they'd want to talk about the fantasy football stuff, and so the show just became absorbed by fantasy football. And so we started bringing on the best high stakes players in the world that I knew that I was competing against every year. And we'd have them on and interview them and ask them about their draft strategies and their approaches to the week and their draft strategies. And we started hosting the first ever live draft shows on a video podcast. That was the first time that was ever being done, pick by pick commentary of a draft going on. And then we started interviewing the operators, just like you're doing to me today. We started interviewing the operators, and they would tell my audience about their contest. Why should they play it? What should they, what's different about your contest, and what do you offer? What's the tweak in your rules that versus theirs that would cause people to want to jump in and take advantage? Or what's your prizes? All the different reasons. And so we had on a group that, they were called the AFFL, the American Fantasy Football League. They had a $30,000 grand prize. They were, a smaller outfit. And I introduced them to my players, and one of my friends actually won their contest. We're like, "Oh my God, you won 30,000, Dave! Dude, that is so cool. That's amazing." And he's like, "I'll never forget the phone call that I got." And he's like, "I'm not getting paid." We're like, "What? What do you mean you're not getting paid? What does that even mean? You won." They don't have the money. They're telling me they don't have it. And that was just such a blow. We were devastated. We were shocked. We were like, wait a minute, what is this? I thought this was all on the up and up, and da-da-da. Well, it was, but they weren't. And so that was the first major fallout for fantasy. Your wife trusts you with this money to enter into fantasy football, and you travel around the country and you jump into these events, and then all of a sudden the money's not there. You're like, whoa, I never even considered that. That never even entered my mind,
That's wild.
Yeah. So that was a wild. That was the original podcast. So then we were all devastated. Well, a couple of the people who listened to my show were a couple of cops out of Chicago, and they said, you know what, we've been in contact with this company, and we're going to buy it. We're going to get it on the right track, and we're going to make it up to these players that have been wronged. And we're going to help them out with their entry fees to help them get going, and get the thing rolling again. And we're going to save this brand because we like it, because they were also players in the contest. So we're like, man, we bring those guys onto the podcast and we have them talking to the audience. And it's, that's an amazing thing. We've got a rebound here, their AFFL is coming back, and damn if they didn't default. They didn't pay their winners the next year either. And so here I am, a podcaster that's just trying to expose my audience to the things we all love in fantasy football. And twice now I've exposed them to a contest that hasn't paid. And this is now our second occurrence of this. And there's also another contest that was happening at the time, and they had $1 million top prize. And apparently there's whispers and rumors that they're not getting paid. And that was a crazy contest concept as it was, but it was not conventional like our sit down and draft kind of leagues. But there's talk of that contest not paying. I'm like, man, this is getting out of control. So I created the Fantasy Players Association. It was time for something. It was a watchdog advocacy group that looked out for the players. And so our job as the FPA was to give a place for the consumer, the customer, to voice any concerns that they have without fear of their message board posts getting deleted and, being silenced for their concerns, to report any irregularities or slow pays or anything at all, so that the contest would then have to respond to the players. And so dispute resolution was definitely a service, and rules and reviews and things of that nature. We just pretty much did all that. And we covered the industry of high stakes fantasy football that is now becoming a thing, and becoming not only a thing of competition and camaraderie and live experience in Vegas every year, but also drama and soap opera filled scams and just, liars. You're like, wow, this is crazy. So yeah, we covered it all. We covered all that. And that was a big step for the industry. And we thought that was important to do.
That is why I didn't know so much would happen, just so you can get involved and, getting burned twice too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the FPA was there, and we started interviewing the players, and we started interviewing the contest operators, and right around that time that we created it, there were whispers that the original, this world championship of fantasy football, the WCOFF, not ours, but the WCOFF, that they were whispers of them not paying. And we're like, wow, well, these new owners that have pulled out these massive events out in Vegas, surely they're gonna pay, right? I mean, that's the main thing, that they pay.
It's Vegas.
Yeah.
And it's in Vegas. And so the owner at the time, he was like, Scott, you're not gonna get access to our books, so, because we just had one rule. We had one rule, that the prize fund was sacred. that was the one thing. You got to make sure you set aside that. And if you're spending all this money in marketing and sponsorships and great, but do it within the reason of the ability to do so, and don't touch the prize pool. So that happened, and then damn if they didn't default. The original World Championship of Fantasy Football defaulted, and that was big at the time. 2011 January, I think, or right around that time, they had defaulted. And it was Easter, so the FPA put out a story that said, "It's Easter, WCOF. Where's the money?" Right? Like, it's if it's Easter and you're a fantasy player and you don't have your money yet, why? Right? That was the headline. And Outside the Lines came out to my house. ESPN came out to the house and did an interview. They did interviews with several of us about the events that were going on, and it can be found. I'll have to find it because I looked for it not too long ago, and ESPN had already scrubbed it. But I have a disc that I just need to upload it, and you can just catch up on the entire industry that way, watching the birth origins of high stakes fantasy football and everything that we've been through. So around that time, here I am talking through a lot of the players, trying to get them as much money as they can. We had a legal defense fund that we had formed. So every part of everybody's charter membership dues at the FPA went towards a legal defense fund. So that way we would have money to at least get opinions, get legal advice, get maybe some representation if we needed it, to write letters if there were ever any issues. And we utilized that and got to know all the players that were hurt and harmed by the WCOF and AFFL's actions. And then, one of the former founders of the WCOF who had sold to the new owners, he got with me and he said, we should have never sold. We should have never sold, and we should reboot it and, do it the right way. So that's what we did. 2012, we created the Fantasy Football World Championships, and I left my post at the FPA to create the FFWC, and we've been doing it ever since. So started with a podcast, just like you guys.
Wow, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I gotta ask you there, like, how after being burned so many times, you know what I mean? You have an audience relying on you for good information or a good league to go into, right? And it's like, obviously you don't mean to send them towards these things or these places. You're hoping that hey, I trust in this, it's going to do its thing, and it just doesn't.
Right.
How hard is it for them to buy back into what you're trying to build when you finally start your own? You leave this, you come here and say, no, we're going to solidify this, and you're still there, obviously, so you're doing it right. But how hard was it in the beginning to start that yet again after being burned that many times?
Yeah, I think always in the back of my mind it was there as wow, we've seen how not to do it. So we have a good blueprint, and player-centered rules, player-centered customer service, and the former founder of the original World Championship, who should have never sold, along with myself. I mean, I think it just made sense. It made too much sense to, because we didn't want to see it go the way it went. Yeah. And that would have been a sad journey. And somebody would have started something that would have been similar and have been this, and have been like, okay, we're going to go through it anyway. But there's not a lot of room in the world of high stakes fantasy football for a lot of contests, because there's just not. I mean, DraftKings and FanDuel, that's a different type of gambling, right? I mean, that's not sit down fantasy football, 3 months of fun and enjoyment.
Yeah.
So
how many? I gotta ask, how many people do you have working for this anyway? Like, is there a big crew, or is it a smaller crew than we think, or?
Well, the live events are definitely a team effort, where there's a dozen staffers that are out there helping, players in rooms, and, people find their spots and leagues and things of that nature, and ordering the food and all that jazz, coordinating with the hotel. And so there's more staff live than there are on a normal basis throughout the year. It's very slow, for because fantasy football is very seasonal. So it's the traditional hockey stick. Everything gets busy. Right now is just literally recovery, getting ready for the season, surveys. We're sending those out. You'll be getting one for your participation in the LVFC, and you'll get to chime in your input on everything. And so
you'll be getting a good review, Scott. Okay.
Yeah, we do that. We do the surveys, and then we're starting Dynasty right now. So all of the Dynasty are already renewing. So the Dynasty owners, just imagine if you could keep that team with Worthy and McLaurin and Gibbs and Barkley and Kamara and Trey McBride and Jalen Daniels. And, if you had that team in a heartbeat, you would take it and start it again, right? So, yeah. Of course you would. And that's what Dynasty is all about, is building that team and then hanging on the next year with that exact same team. And if you won the league, you would have the 12 pick in the rookie draft. If you're the worst team in the league, you would have the 1 pick in the rookie draft. And they're looking forward to those rookie draft picks. They're looking forward to trading those rookie draft picks if they don't see the value there. We open up trading in Dynasty leagues, and only in Dynasty leagues. But because that adds to the entire experience when you're talking about Dynasty and keeping your team intact. Well, like I said, another man's trash, one man's trash, another man's treasure. So they get to trade.
Yeah.
So that happens throughout the spring and summer, and then right around May is when the FFWC circa leagues start to kick off, and we call it May Madness. And you get your deposits in May, you get your discount. And you lock in your team for us. That helps us plan and prepare how much space we need, what kind of space we need. And we start to plan the event for September, which we're already doing.
That's pretty good. What is your favorite kind of league?
I'm definitely a Dynasty head now. After starting it, I'm addicted to Dynasty. That's what I say. Once you try Dynasty, you become addicted to it. So I have like 10 or 11 Dynasty leagues that I'm in.
Oh,
wow.
It's really nothing once you start, your Dynasty. You just kind of, you adapt and you add more every year. You add more. You add another one every year. I haven't added any in a while, but if one folds for whatever reason, then I'll add another one. But that's just my local private leagues now. I can't do the big main leagues anymore.
Yeah.
As an operator, but just my local private leagues around the internet that, somebody runs $50, $80, $60, $100,
Yeah. And everybody's paying attention right now. Obviously March 12th started the day, man. So everybody's looking at where everybody's going right now. And me and C-Dub, we started our first Dynasty last year. And, I right away, I saw Robert Saleh go back to the 49ers, so I made a trade for Niners defense. Like, it's going to be a powerhouse again. There's these little things that you want to do, so you start to make those little things.
Yep, that's Dynasty. We if you pay in full, if you're already renewed, you have your trading rights turned on. If you don't have your team paid in full, you technically don't own the rights to it. So you have a deadline coming up that you need to have your dues paid in full by, and then. As far as your rookie picks for your future picks, as long as you have your deposit in place, you can trade your future picks. But if you haven't made at least a good faith deposit towards your team, then you don't have the rights to those future draft picks.
That is a very good rule, my friend.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's a rule that everybody should be doing in every single league.
Yeah. You need to have a deposit in just to show that you're coming back, and it's a non-refundable deposit. If you're bouncing on that team, then that deposit goes towards the next owner. So the next owner, because again, you've traded away his picks, and now he's got to take over this team that's devoid of youthful rookie picks. So he gets a discount when he jumps in because you've already paid his deposit for him.
Yeah. And what happens if they don't? Somebody can buy that team if they don't finish making the payments.
Yeah, so that's what an orphan is. We call those orphans, and we have an orphan lobby that you can pick up a team that is already built and it's already an established league, and it may even have good teams and good picks in it, and you'll get it at a discount so that you can take it over and sort of get it back to life. So that is happening right now as we speak.
You're a busy man, Scott Atkins.
Yeah, we call that the Dynasty Football World Championship.
That's pretty
Cool.
dope, man. I gotta say, man, that's
Now
pretty
we have
cool.
those leagues at $75, $150, and the World Championship, which is $299, $300. So there's different varieties of that as well. And we're already doing starter best ball leagues. We're doing they're in the middle of a starter best ball right now. I just saw it. Jamar Chase was the number 1 pick. Barkley at number 2. You didn't get him at number 2 last year.
No, sir.
Gibbs was the 6th pick overall. And your boy Jaden Daniels, he was the 4-8 pick at QB4 behind only Lamar, Josh Allen, and Burrow.
I'll tell you what, man. C-Dub and I, man, we did probably about 6 different mock drafts on what would happen if this guy was gone, what would happen if this guy was gone. And that's why we knew exactly who to pick. And we said, look, if these running backs keep coming to us, we'll worry about wide receivers later. And sure enough, everybody kept falling. And we were going to take Chris Olave, and he was gone. So we just went Alvin Kamara, I believe it was. And it's just like back and forth and back. We went Gibbs, Barkley, and I think Kamara on a 3rd when we came back. I was like, we need a
Brown in there too at one point.
What was it?
I think we stuck AJ Brown in there too at one point, didn't we?
Was it AJ Brown?
It was one of the receivers.
No, we had
we debated AJ Brown or Barkley, and we took Barkley.
Yeah, you took Barkley.
Yeah, and we had McLaurin in there. Yeah, we had a pretty solid squad. It was just we were trying to in this league. What we noticed was when you're looking at this, we have to be ahead of the curve by 2 or 3 weeks. So noticing, like, obviously you can't help injury, right? But if we're looking at something like, hey, we might want to pick up a backup or something, like we were trying to prepare for when the playoffs kicked in, like, hey, we need a bench. Like, we need a bench in case somebody goes down or, what have you. Who's more likely to get hurt? We were looking at all that stuff. Like, who's more likely to get hurt and that is a running offense, or who's likely to get hurt and only has one alpha wide receiver? Let's go pick them up now. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you're in your own head with this stuff,
Can I ask you a question?
Shoot.
So the Las Vegas Fantasy Championship that you entered, $349 league fee. That's no joke. That's a sizable amount of money for a lot of fantasy players, for 95% of the players out there. What had you been doing those types of leagues before?
No, it's the first time.
Okay. It's a major step up. I mean, from an average fantasy league, you're jumping into like shark infested waters, because I can tell you just a little bit of data behind the scenes. Sometimes people say, well, just because they're spending more money doesn't mean they're a better fantasy player. And that's true. That doesn't mean they're better. What I can tell you from the data behind the scenes is that they're more active. So time on site, the amount of bid groups that they put in, and the amount of players inside of each bid group all scale up like a hockey stick, the more money that goes into that league. So the more you play, on average, the average player that plays in the mid stakes, for example, will enter 2.1 bid groups per week, with an average of like 2.1 players in each bid group. So they're, I've got a guy that I need to replace on my team. He's dead weight, and I'm going to try to get a new guy, and I'll even try to put a backup in there in case I don't get him. And that's the average guy that's out there. But when you start to step up into the higher entry leagues, they're putting 4 bid groups in with an average like 8 players in each bid group, because they're making sure, without a doubt, that they replace the dead weight on their bench. They're putting more time into it. Because if you have somebody that's injured and tore their ACL, the fact you're only putting 2 players in to replace that player this week is a joke, because there's 11 other people you're competing against that are trying to replace their players too. And so if you're looking at these 2 guys, they probably are too. There's a chance. So if there's dead weight on your roster that you have to get rid of, you have to just bid deep. Right? I don't care. Anything, a body is better than that torn ACL on your bench. And the funny thing is that body could end up being a starter if an injury happens to a player in front of them. And so that Wednesday bidding is there for a reason, because Wednesday bidding is a day before the Thursday night football game. So even if you're going to pick somebody up as a backup, an RB2 or an RB3 even for a running back that's playing in the Thursday night game, it's better than that torn ACL on your bench. Even if you can't find anything, to replace it with, I don't know. Well, there's Rico Dowdle. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Okay. I'll go grab him, or Samaje Perine, or even a backup kicker. I mean, I don't care. Anything is better than that torn ACL on your bench. And so the data suggests, and it's very loud, that the more money you spend, the more active you are on average. And I can probably do this too, looking at league win. And I think we have done this before, league winners and people who make the playoffs. If you look at their bids versus the average, but again, the average gets thrown off because people that don't make the playoffs sort of start to quit. And so they slow way down on improving their team. So that data is kind of skewed. But even if I took it from like weeks 1 to week 10, before you know that you're out of it, it probably says the same thing, that, the more active players are the ones. And a lot of times activity is really gives you that extra edge, because we're all watching the news and reading and da-da-da-da. And yes, some people may be better evaluators of talent and, oh man, his speed. And, once it hits the field, it's going to do that. Yeah, but we're all kind of like, who knows, right? So there's a chance that activity alone makes up for quite a bit of that gap that, think about how many points. How many points were you ahead by, or how many points did a team miss the playoffs by? Because if he would have just scored 6 to 10, 12 more points for the year, he would have made the playoffs. That happens all the time in every league, all year round.
So. Yeah, I think we missed. I think at one week we didn't have a kicker, or we had I forget what it was. There was 1 week, and I was like, that was my fault because I was in control of the lineup. But I always checked in with him, be like, hey, these are the 4 or 5 guys we're looking at. What are you thinking? Well, let's go by matchup. You know what I mean? If we're not going to hang on to them long term, let's just use them, abuse them, and keep it going. All right. Well, like at a couple points we did that, and it was important just to do that, just so we can get the dub. And I think it was our only 2 losses, I think, came with 0.5 each. I think those are the only 2 losses we had, were half a point. And it was still devastating to us, Scott. Let me tell you, like, we were like, no, we don't want to lose by 0.5, like
it's the worst. Absolutely.
You had a great 3-week stretch run there, especially that week 15, you popped 200. That's a great feeling heading into the playoffs with a 200 burger,
Yeah.
And then had a 180, and then another. Well, you were at 194. I'm sorry, 194 week 15 is close. 178 week 16, and then 201 in week 17. So that's a great finish to the stretch. And look, it's hard to do both. And what you did, it's hard to be great in the regular season and great in the postseason. I always talk about golf as 2 different games, right? Putting and it's just 2. There's putting and there's golf, right? It's like there's regular season and then there's postseason. And if you're too hot in the regular season, there's no way your guys are going to be hot in the postseason. It just doesn't. It's always at week 15 somebody goes off. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's always a big 50 burger or something from somebody in that week 15, and that really sets the tone for all those teams. And when Barkley's putting up those kind of crazy numbers, and
we really wanted to keep McMillan, and we were just waiting for him to pop off. Like we were just waiting for it, and then we just held him for so long. And when he wasn't doing anything, we were like, dude, we made the decision to let him go. And I think it was either the week or 2 or after or something like that. Then he just started. Godwin was out after that point, so it's like,
yeah.
But it's we were waiting for it, and then as soon as it happened, we were like, damn it. Like,
yeah, as soon as Godwin went down, we went and got him, and then it just took him a while to get ramped up, and just like, man, we would have just waited a little bit longer.
Yeah, he did. He finally hit. He's a good dynasty stash, and they brought back Godwin, but he started putting up numbers: 4 for 59 and 2, 5 for 75 and 1, 5 for 57 and 1, 5 for 50 and 2, 5 for 74 and 1. What? That's a nice stretch to finish the season.
I'll tell you right now that the one dude that was preaching Godwin's name, Godwin. It was C-Dub over here. Christian called that. He's like, yo, they're putting him back in the slot. They're putting him right back in the slot where he's supposed to be.
Yeah.
He's like, if he's there, we got to grab him. I was like, all right, like done. So it's like, I couldn't have done this unless I called him and I said, yo, I need your help on this. Like I said, I wanted to bring it up a notch this year, and I wanted to try a higher stakes kind of thing. And I was like, do you want to do this? Do you want to split this? He's like, yeah, of course. I couldn't have done this by myself. So it's like us combined, perfect. I think we'll probably do it again this year, man. Like you run a tight ship. You run an awesome program, dude.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's a testament to the high stakes community that have been through a lot and have seen everything. And we wanted to put a lot of skill into the game and reduce the amount of luck as much as possible. Like I said, the no trading, the 11-man lineup is really a way for players like yourself and people who put in the extra time to look for the little things. It allows you to stretch your legs a little bit and start somebody that, while they're struggling to put a lineup together, you've got somebody on your bench that you can plop in there and, separates the men from the boys, so to speak. And that really helps. And I think that attracts a lot of the high stakes talent because they want to reduce the luck as much as they can, but without eliminating it completely. Like, nobody wants to really play in a total points league because it's just kind of boring. And it's just like, okay, if you get out of it you get out of it fast. And at least with head to head, we try to measure both head to head and total points, make them equivalent and equal in value. So we take, for the playoffs, for example, we take, the number one, there's 4 seeds that get into the playoffs, the top record, the next most points, the next best record, and the next most points. So there's 4 teams that get in, 2 of them are off record, 2 of them are off points. It ends that debate of which is more important in fantasy because it's a never ending debate. There is no right answer. It's just pick your poison and which one, we think it adds to the fun factor to have the head-to-head matchup. And total points just doesn't have that when it comes time for a weekly win. So we do both, and you have 2 chances to get in. And yes, that means sometimes you'll get a win playing an inferior opponent. And yes, that means sometimes you'll have a loss versus a superior opponent. It's just one of those things that has never polled 70% to change. And I think it is a fun factor in fantasy that people just don't want to let go of. I'd be okay with it if they wanted to, but it's sort of the best compromise between the two.
Yeah.
There's I think you guys came out with a great strategy too to pay out people, best record, highest points, stuff like that. You spread the wealth out, and it makes people want to play more. When I saw that, I was like, you know what, that keeps everybody engaged. That keeps everybody wanting to play more. So you know what I mean? You can still have some really high scores, and you might not be in first place, but you're still getting 200 back. Like, that's pretty solid.
Yeah. The regular season is important to reward something, right? Yeah. It's not the championship trophy, but it does mean something. And so we wanted to make sure and put cash in people's hands for that accomplishment first. And once that's done, then let the best team win. And we're trying to establish who the best team is by putting you guys into a 3-week steel cage match, right? And that is total points. But it's a 3-week total points shootout in those 3 weeks. Now, you can ask yourself, well, why don't we do it head-to-head in the playoffs? Well, because years ago, I'll remember, Andrew Luck and T.Y. Hilton, they went on a tremendous tear together, and they were the MVPs of your fantasy team all year, and then it became that week 13. I think it was week 13 of the season, and they had an awful game. And that sometimes in high stakes, a lot of some other high stakes leagues, they would use that as their sort of their regular season league champ before it went to the overall. That'd be the league championship week. And it's like I think they scored 2 points between the two of them, Andrew Luck and T.Y. Hilton. And it's like, man, your season is over, and so it's important to reward the regular season. If you finish the regular season on top, getting that cash back in your pocket and you're already on house money, going into the championship, whatever happens, I'm still in profit because I swept record and points, and now I'm ahead. So that was important to do. And then, look, the Circa partnership, we haven't even talked about it, but it was it's a game changer for the industry to have a partner like Circa, because if you've ever been, once you're there, you'll know what we're talking about. It is a difference maker in hotels, in Vegas, and in sports entertainment. The sports book is the best in the world, the biggest screens in the world, the best resolution and brightest screens in the world to watch a game. The best viewing experience you've ever had to watch a football game is at Circa. And they also have it outdoors at the place called Stadium Swim. And it's the exact same thing as indoors, but put that outdoors along with a bunch of pools and a bunch of women in pools with music for the commercial breaks and sports on at the same time. And you have cabanas and you have heated pools when it's cold. You have air conditioners out there. I mean, it's an amazing experience. And they call it the great compromise too. If you want to bring your wife, she loves it because she's got her cabana. She's got her cabana and her people bringing drinks, and you've got your sports and your draft, and it's just in the game on Thursday night. We have our kickoff party there on Thursday night, and then we've been blessed as of last year, and now again I'm assuming this year we'll have the Friday night kickoff party. So we had 2 games this past year. We had the Thursday night where it was the Chiefs and the Ravens, and then it was Friday. It was the Packers Eagles. And that starts the season. So now we have 2 parties on Thursday and Friday out in Vegas to start off the weekend. Thursday night, Friday night. And by the way, we're drafting before and after these games. So there's drafts that start Thursday morning that you either can participate in or just come and watch. It's the 5K. It's called the Commander League. It's the 5K. Everybody puts up a 5K entry fee. And that sets the tone that morning because the NFL season is here tonight. We have the first game. So you got the 5K league at 9 a.m. You have the 10K league at 12:30, the 10K Top Gun. And, we created those high roller leagues as an aspirational brand for people who want to move up and ladder up. And so you win the Las Vegas Fantasy Championship. You can take that money or you can roll it over into a seat at the World Championships the following year. And with that World Championships, you can take that money or you can roll that over into a seat into the 10K Top Gun. And you're talking about life-changing money in a league now, 12, where you just have to beat the other 11 opponents. And you're drafting in Vegas on opening day before the first games of the year. And then after that kickoff game, we're drafting Thursday night at Circa. So after that game, you're talking about like midnight East Coast. These guys are all going back to the suite where we're drafting the Circa Invitational League, where some of the best players in the world are reacting in real time to the game they just watched. They just saw the Chiefs play the Ravens. They just saw Isaiah Likely dominate and almost score the game-winning touchdown in the back of the end zone. And they're thinking about now, where do I draft Isaiah Likely? Where do I draft Derrick Henry? Because Derrick Henry was not being loved like he will be loved now that we've seen him play for the Ravens on that Thursday Night Football. And so everything changes right then and there in real time while we're watching that draft on Thursday night. And that draft, and I'll just tell you, that draft starts off by bidding for your draft slot. So they are bidding not real dollars. They are bidding their blind bid dollars. So you know how you only have 1,000 blind bid bucks? Mm-hmm. That league on Thursday night, they are bidding their blind bid dollars for the number 1 spot. All right, we'll start the bidding at $10, 10, 50, 100, 150, 200, going once, 250 going twice, sold for 250, the 1 pick. He drafts the 1 pick. 2 pick, you're now on the clock. Do I hear $10? And they do that for the entire first round. And then when they sit down and then they draft that draft. And that's always a fun draft because, my gosh, every year, that Thursday night game, we see action. We see movement, ADP movement on players, where they were drafted, where they're being drafted now. And then we do that all again on Friday. So Friday, Thursday night, we're drafting late. Friday morning, we typically don't host a draft because I know my staff and I know our team. We've been up late on Thursday night. We want to decompress on Friday morning. We don't have any drafts scheduled until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. 2 o'clock is our first draft. And then we have our draft round. There's probably several drafts going on at 2:00. Okay, because people want to get going on Friday and they want to draft. They've had their breakfast, now they're going to draft. And then we have enough time to get ready to watch the next kickoff party on Friday night. Last year it was the Eagles and the Packers, and there was all kinds of stuff there. Saquon Barkley is now a force to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? We didn't realize that Saquon would be drafted in the top 5 picks. Yeah, he's going to be drafted in the top 5 picks now on Friday night. On Friday night, Barkley is now a top 5 pick. Before that, for the rest of the year, prior to that, Barkley was being had in the second round, mid-second, sometimes even late second. You're like, what? We don't. You saw him in action, and now you also have the Jordan Love injury.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know what that means for all those players, and for Jacobs, and for everybody involved. So that game kicks off everything as well now, and we have Friday drafts. And then Saturday morning, we do it all day. We do Saturday morning, 10, 3, and 7, and even midnight. So we do drafts all Saturday, all up until the following, to that night when everybody wakes up in the morning, and then it's game day, Sunday, the first week 1 of the NFL season, and where it's just nirvana, and you have all your lineups in, and you're watching, and who you're rooting for now because you just drafted in the World Championship. And that's one thing we will say, that when you come to Circa and you draft your team in Vegas at the World Championship, you're going to leave with something. A lot of times if you go to Vegas, you don't leave with anything. You're like, man, I'm tapped out. I totally broke. Years ago, he came to Vegas for the first time, and he was broke literally 3 hours into the trip. Like, he was done. Like, what are you going to do the entire trip, bro? You just blew everything you had, and he becomes a tag along, It's like, at least when you come to Vegas for the World Championships, you are leaving with a team you are going to manage, win or lose on that first week. You have a team you're going to take with you all year for the NFL season, and it's going to be your most important league you ever drafted. And so that is the World Championship. But we did, because it was such an amazing thing that we wanted as many people to experience as possible, the last several years now, with the Circa partnership, we opened up the Circa Las Vegas Fantasy Championship live drafts. So you can draft that mid-stakes team in Vegas for just an additional $100. You find, you don't have to stay at Circa. Circa's pretty pricey, but it's premium. It's a beautiful room, great experience, best of the best. It's a 4.5 stars downtown Vegas. Okay, this is at the top of Fremont Street. It's the best experience you can have in Vegas, in my opinion. It's not on the Strip anymore. It's downtown Fremont. But you can also stay 37 steps away as you walk out the Circa doors. There's the Golden Nugget. It's a 4-star hotel, and it's very affordable. Best value in all of Vegas. So I think you have the best experience in all of Vegas at Circa. Right across the street downtown, the Golden Nugget is the best value in all of Vegas. Wherever you stay, doesn't matter because they're both right there. You can go back and forth between the two. But now you can draft the Circa Las Vegas Fantasy Championship. Instead of it being $349, it's $449, an extra $100. And that pays for your that pays for your events pass while you're in Vegas. It pays for us to put a draft board up with live sticker girls to put the stickers on the board while you're drafting. And it pays for your food and your drinks at the draft for you and your co-manager. It's a great value. I mean, you're not going to find a better value. We wanted to give that experience to people who hadn't yet taken the plunge in the World Championship to do it in the mid-stakes level. So I highly recommend it, man. Try to find a way to do it. It'll be the time of your life.
I'll tell you what, man. That sounds exciting.
It sounds absolutely incredible, honestly.
I wouldn't steer you wrong. It's once you put it on your bucket list for right now, and then figure out how to make it happen. It's not that hard to happen. You just gotta figure out how to make it happen, and then once you do, I would be surprised if you're like, man, this is an annual ritual kind of thing to start the NFL season off. Because if you feel the way we do about fantasy football and the way about the NFL, and it's the one team you're going to manage, and you're getting 3 months of entertainment for it. It's not just like a one-time thing where you go out, it's a golf trip, and but we're having no, you're getting 3 months of entertainment for this thing. This is like so even if you take the money that you're spending on it, you spread that out over the almost 4 months, actually, September, October, November, December. Yeah, it's 4 months. You spread that out over the 4 months. Well, how much is it really? When you spread it out over the 4 months of entertainment that you're going to have, and your wife's going to get tired of you hearing about, I don't know who to start. I got to figure out who this is. It's either him or him. She's like, I don't care. It's like, can we go out to eat now, please? I got to get my waivers in.
Let's go. Scott, you've been a ball of fun on this show, man. Let me tell you. And for anybody that's looking for a new challenge or something different, where can they sign up for Full-Time Fantasy World Championship?
Yeah, they go to playffwc.com, playffwc.com. You'll find all the different types of leagues we offer, the dynasty, the season-long, the auction, redraft, $25 starter leagues, all the way up to $10,000 Top Gun in Vegas. We do it all. Every draft can be done live and online. So, the online stuff has been big. It used to be all live drafts, and then, online became a thing, and 70% of our drafts are now online, but there's still that 30% of that Vegas thing that we hold close to our heart, because it's kind of our annual ritual and rite of passage. So I highly recommend the Vegas, but if not, then you draft online and you get your feet wet.
Right, fair enough. Do you guys have a Twitter or I guess we always debate this, X, Twitter? We still call it Twitter, so
Yeah.
It's Twitter. Yeah, it's Twitter. PlayFFWC, the same thing. PlayFFWC everywhere. We got lucky on the same there, but I guess you can't tweet anymore. You can't tweet. It's not a tweet when it's. I heard Elon say that, because it used to be, because it was limited to so many characters, 250, however many characters. It's not limited to that many characters. So how can you? It's not really a tweet when it's 4,000 words, or whatever it is. It's like it's a post.
You're singing a song at that point.
Yeah, it's a post. It's a post.
It's a whole album.
Yeah. PlayFFWC is the spot.
Scott, thank you for all your time, man. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate the great time last year. And me and C-Dub, we're going back in this year, man, and we're hoping to take that chip. And
we're definitely taking the chip for sure. Calling a shot now.
We
got a chip on our shoulder to get the chip. So
now, did you guys come? You came from the Asman listener league, right? So
yeah.
Are you watching his podcast, or did you accidentally just join that one?
No, I listened to his podcast, and okay. He said we got 3 spots left, and I said, yo, you know what? Like I said, give me the link, and I got the link and just started to put all that stuff together. So I had Jake on my podcast as well, on Iconical, and Jake's a great dude, man. Like I missed him at the combine too, just like I missed you. We were both there. We were staying at the J-Dub as well. So next year we'll be there. Maybe we'll have to, go to St. Elmo, something like that again.
Yeah, Jake comes to all the Circa events. He's big time with Circa. He loves that place, and he brings out a crowd too. So that was sort of a great natural fit. And me being a Jets fan, I was watching his pod all the time, and
you have no idea how happy that just made me. I'm a Jets fan through and through.
Long suffering Jets fan, yeah.
Adversity, we love it. We love adversity.
Yeah, I'm out on this one again.
I got my
that is my favorite helmet, dude. That metallic green is just
Nice.
That's my Sam Darnold, but I add it to the list of jerseys and that have been sent to the Shadow Realm. And I was a Zach Wilson truther, and I still am.
Are you?
I've been sent to the Shadow Realm on more than one occasion, intentionally, because I wear it as a badge of honor now. But
I'll have to talk.
Zach's going to get us.
Jake about that.
Zach's going to get us in Miami. He's going to get us.
Yeah, I already said it. I said, watch. It's going to happen. He's going to end up starting. He's going to carve us up a game. It's just it always happens to us.
Yeah, it's funny how nobody wanted to listen to me about the coaching staff when it was Zach at quarterback. But then once it was Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, it was like, it's the coaching staff. Well, that's what we were saying with Zach too. It was the coaches. They failed him, just like they failed every other quarterback before him. So it's no different. These quarterbacks go on to do, fine things in the league. And you don't have to be a world beater to get a job in this league. You just have to be, decent. And if you have good coaching, do you think Anthony Richardson is just that bad? Or yeah, we knew he was a developmental player. And when the Colts drafted him, you knew you would have to develop him. Have they? No. They haven't done their job with Richardson, right? So it's like
not at all.
That's you knew that going in.
Yeah, look at Geno Smith. He sat behind Russell Wilson for a while and became an average starter after that. You know, look at Sam Darnold. Went from place to place to place. Yeah, that's his boy right there. That's
Big Baker fan here for sure.
We could have
knew he's going to be great.
That's one that we couldn't have drafted. We could have drafted Lamar. We could have drafted Allen. What can you do?
Scott, don't worry. You could vent to me. I will understand. I understand the pain, my friend. I understand it.
Thanks for having me on, guys. It's been a real blast.
Yes,
Absolutely.
sir. Anytime you wanna come on and talk ball, which we'll be going through everything and all the evaluated players we're going to be doing all through next year, all through this year too. So, Scott, thank you for your time, because that is one thing I always say you can never get back. So, great gratitude in giving it to us. Thank you.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Good luck this year. See ya.
Thanks, bud.
See ya.